In the first 15 seconds, you need to understand one thing about Rowan Hale, the giant rancher who stood 6'7" and carried the weight of an entire forgotten valley on his shoulders. He owned land so vast it touched the horizon, yet his life was emptier than the dry wells that dotted his property. His wife had died 5 years ago, taking with her every dream he ever had. And Rowan, he had no children, no warmth, no laughter left in that wooden house. But everything changed the day he bought a barren woman for $1 at a county auction. She looked him in the eyes and whispered, "Why save someone who can give you nothing?" And Rowan, with a voice that sounded like thunder wrapped in sadness, simply asked, "What if you're wrong?" Her name was Elara Wynne, a fragile-looking woman with bones sharp as a winter crow and a reputation that had followed her through 3 towns, barren, worthless, broken stock, they said. The cruel landowner who claimed her debts had put her on the auction list under unmarriageable labor, a title that stung deeper than any wound. Rowan hadn't planned to be there. He had only come to buy feed and fencing wire. But when he saw her, the way she kept her chin high though her world was collapsing, something strange stirred inside him, something he hadn't felt since before grief hollowed him out. He raised one hand and offered $1. Not because he wanted a servant. Not because he wanted a wife. But because she looked like someone standing on the edge of a cliff, praying for just one person to pull her back. People laughed at him. Whispered that Rowan Hale had finally gone mad from loneliness. But he didn't flinch. He signed the paper, walked to her, and said gently, "You're free. You owe no one anything. Come with me only if you want to." Elara stared at him, unable to form words. No one had spoken to her like that in years. They rode back to the ranch in silence, the sky a burn of orange and pink. She watched him from the corner of her eye, shocked by how carefully he rode, making sure she didn't fall behind. And when they reached his home, a place built from solid oak and old pane, he handed her a warm blanket, poured her a cup of boiled milk, and said, "You can have the guest room. This house has too many empty spaces anyway." In the days that followed, Elara tried to work harder than anyone he'd ever seen. She cleaned the barn, fixed stalls, chopped vegetables, tended the chickens, never resting, always trembling as if waiting for him to shout at her. But Rowan never raised his voice. Instead, he kept leaving food on the table, blankets on her chair, boots near her door, quiet offerings from a man who didn't know how to show kindness out loud. One cold morning, Rowan found her coughing in the barn. The dust, the cold, the exhaustion, it had all caught up. He rushed her inside, lit the stove, and wrapped her in his old coat. She protested, "I'm not worth your trouble." He shook his head slowly. "Elara, you don't need to earn a place here. You already have one." Weeks became months. Their conversations grew longer, easier. She asked about his late wife. He asked about her childhood. She told him she had been declared barren at 20, told she would never be a mother. Rowan looked at her, eyes soft. Some things heal when no one expects them to. And in the 8th month of her stay, Elara fainted while gathering eggs. Rowan caught her just before she hit the floor. When the doctor arrived, an older woman named Dr. Marin Dask, she broke into the widest smile either of them had seen. "Elara, you're pregnant." Elara burst into tears. Rowan sat down hard, the bench creaking under his weight. Shock, joy, disbelief, his hands shook. "How?" Dr. Marin shrugged. "I've seen this before. Stress can shut the body down. Safety can wake it up." Their son, Alder, was born in the heat of June, under a sky full of lightning. Rowan cried harder than the baby. A year later, they welcomed twins. Then another son. Then 2 daughters. Then one more boy. In 8 years, the woman who once believed she would never hold a child in her arms had given Rowan 7. The ranch, once hauntingly silent, now roared with laughter, footsteps, broken toys, muddy boots, and, finally, life. But life is never without shadows. The more children they had, the more help they needed. Rowan hired hands, expanded the ranch, bought new equipment. Competition grew fierce in the valley. Other ranchers resented how quickly Rowan's land was flourishing. The worst of them was Silas Dray, a wealthy cattle baron who had once wanted Alara for himself as unpaid labor. He believed Rowan had stolen from him. Silas began spreading rumors that Rowan had bought Alara like cattle, that the children weren't his, that Alara was still legally bound to pay Silas's debts. And then came the hardest blow. One evening, government agents arrived with papers showing Rowan owed years of back land taxes he had never received notice for because Silas had intercepted the mail. Rowan suddenly owed more than he had in the bank. If he didn't pay, the ranch, and the children, would be uprooted within months. Alara froze when she heard. "This happened because of me," she whispered. "Silas is doing this because you saved me." Rowan pulled her into his arms, but his voice trembled. "This was my choice. My kindness. My responsibility." Yet for the first time, he felt fear clawing at his chest. The next months were brutal. Rowan worked from before dawn until the moon rose high. He sold cattle, took loans, cut his own meals in half. Alara began sewing clothes for neighboring families, sometimes working until her fingers bled. Their older children helped in the fields. But the debt grew faster than they could chip away at it. One night, when the children were asleep and the lantern light flickered weakly, Rowan slumped at the table, face buried in his hands. Alara reached for him, but he pulled away, whispering, "I did this. I chose kindness, and now I might lose everything I love." Music falls to a faint, aching hum. This was the dark moment, the point where hope thinned to a thread. They barely spoke for days. Rowan avoided looking at Alara, ashamed. Alara blamed herself, silently drowning in guilt. The ranch felt heavy again, like it was sinking back into the loneliness it once knew. But sometimes, kindness waits years before circling back. Dr. Barren, the same woman who delivered all their children, heard what had happened. So did the townspeople, the same ones who once mocked Rowan for buying Alara for $1. They met secretly, planned quietly, and acted boldly. One morning, Rowan woke to the sound of engines. Dozens of trucks lined the road. Farmers, ranchers, teachers, blacksmiths, storekeepers, they all stepped out carrying envelopes. Alara covered her mouth, trembling. "Rowan, what's happening?" Barren called out, "You two have given more to this valley than anyone. You fed families during the drought. You offered free hay in the winter storms. You saved Alara when everyone else turned their back. Now it's our turn." They handed Rowan envelope after envelope, cash, checks, coins, whatever they could spare. Some gave $10. Some gave $100. One little girl handed Alara 2 crumpled dollars and whispered, "For the babies." By dusk, the entire tax debt had been paid. Every cent. Rowan sank to his knees, overwhelmed. Alara fell beside him, sobbing into his chest. The children hugged them both, confused but happy. The valley cheered. And for the first time in 9 long years, Rowan felt the full weight of his kindness return home, not heavy, but warm, radiant, life-changing. Silas Dray tried to challenge the payments legally, but the town turned against him. No one worked for him again. No one bought from him. He left the valley within weeks, a bitter man defeated by something he could never understand, community. Life flourished after that. The ranch grew stronger, the children taller. Alara's eyes sparkled again. Rowan laughed more often, a deep rolling sound that shook the walls in the best way. Every year, on the anniversary of the auction, Rowan placed a single dollar coin on the mantelpiece, a reminder of the day that changed all their lives. Kindness is not a transaction. It isn't a strategy or an investment. It's a seed planted in faith, watered with sacrifice, and left in the hands of time. Rowan didn't save Alara because he expected something in return. He saved her because he could not bear to watch a person collapse under the weight of a world that had forgotten them. And that one act of kindness, done without calculations, without conditions, grew into a family of 7 children, a revived valley, and a legacy that outlived every storm. Sometimes the goodness you give doesn't come back when you want it to. Sometimes it doesn't come back when you need it to. But one day, often when hope feels impossible, it returns in a form so overwhelming you finally understand, kindness is never wasted. Not a word, not a gesture, not a single moment of compassion ever disappears. So if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to remember that even the smallest kindness can change the shape of a life.